It honestly makes you feel like you can do anything. Reflection is a life hack that is extremely underutilized. If you're not failing, you're not playing big enough. Less time in thought, more time in action. It's not about how you can make more money. It's about asking the right question. The right question is, who can I help? Be kind to yourself so you can make room for all the beautiful change in your life. How many lives have I enriched?
Jonathan Z. Cohen is a former prosecutor, host of Inside the Inspired podcast, and a coach to high-performing professionals navigating through pressure, failure, and growth. Coming up is an amazing conversation with an amazing person. But before we listen, please subscribe as it helps out the show greatly. Thank you and enjoy. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Health Movement Podcast. I'm Derek, your host, teacher of over 20 years and a certified personal trainer. I have an awesome guest with us today. I'm very excited to talk to, but before I introduce him, I want to reiterate, as always, that we're not doctors. So before you go changing any programming or anything like that, please consult with your physician. All right, so today's guest, he's a speaker, a coach, and host of the Inside the Inspired podcast. Jonathan Z. Cohen works with high-performing professionals, especially those in high-stress careers, to help build discipline, resilience, and systems that actually hold up under pressure. So, Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us.
Derek, pleasure to be here. Thank you for making me a part of this experience. Look forward to chatting with you.
All right. And I just I guess the first question would be, how did you get started? Where did all this begin?
How did I get started in podcasting?
The world of fitness, in helping other people achieve what they want.
Wow.
It's an open question. I know there's a lot of answers there.
No, it's great because when you do these interviews and you sit on the other side of the mic, it's always interesting to think about how simple a question can be, but also how much pressure it puts on the guest. So at the same time, like I don't feel the pressure, but I mean, like, wow, I can't imagine how many times I've posed a question to a guest that was like, well, you know. And that
started it off right with that too.
Helping people has always been at the core of everything I do. And I was in high school, I was volunteering with children who struggle with special needs. I'd go on to work with them in different ways later in my career, but at my core, I spent my entire career in some way, shape, or form figuring or weaving service into everything that I do. How can I help? How can I give? I believe creates room for more to come in. And so how I got started was in this world of helping people, as we put it, was largely about getting to a place where I was able to help someone. So
yeah,
I guess you could say like my enlightenment, for lack of a better way of putting it, came in the form of graduating law school. I was going to business school at night and I was working full time at a firm during the day doing doc review. And I would wake up, I'd train, I'd go to work, and then I'd take the subway down at night and I'd go to school for 3 hours after having taken the bar and like done all this stuff that I was like so over academics. And I always say the hardest exam I ever took wasn't the bar, it was the exam after the bar, because it's that endurance mindset, right? I'm sure you can relate with fitness, like that ability to add one more rep. And I just remember sitting in front of that exam being like, what am I doing here? Why did I decide to pursue this? And so while I was working on doc review, which is pretty much reviewing documents that pertain to legal cases as part of discovery, where there's like tons of documents and you got to sort them by relevance. And so I didn't know what podcasts were, but someone had recommended to me because I got tired of listening to music, all this stuff, to listen to podcasts. And so I threw one on in like 2018 and I was sorting through these documents. I'd heard this name on the periphery of my mind, Tony Robbins, didn't know who he was or what he was about. I just heard his name. So I plug it into the podcast search bar on Apple Podcasts, and I just put on the first thing that came up, and two questions were posed. what if you could control your thoughts and what if you could control your emotions? And I thought to myself, is that allowed? And so those two questions sent me down this rabbit hole where at the same time I was changing my body composition, I was really starting to figure out my fitness and different things were starting to come together.
Yeah.
And so my career would, shift into public service in the form of becoming a criminal prosecutor at the Bronx District Attorney's Office, where I served 3 years, special victims, prosecuted thousands of crimes from the misdemeanor to the felony level. And I was in real time learning about the value of presence. I was learning about the value of helping people in high stress situations. I was learning how to manage my own emotions in those moments. And I was auditing myself the entire time, really thinking about what am I getting out of this? How am I changing? I knew that this job would transform me. That's why I sought it out. I didn't think I could get it. And I think that's a lot of what life is about, picking something just outside the bounds of your skill set to help you go and pursue the thing. And so that stress, that microdosing of the stress in these high pressure situations really inspired me to want to teach people and train people and work with people to help them deal with things that maybe don't come as easily to them. And growing up, I really struggled with like reading comprehension, critical thinking, processing, all these different things that made it difficult for me to make sense of the world. And so I felt like if I could come to these conclusions quickly, I could help other people come to them even faster. And most people don't remember your name, but they remember how you make them feel, right? Maya Angelou
Yeah.
said that. And
Yeah.
so for me, it was about evoking that emotion in people the same way people had done it for me and my mentors, my role models. And so I really got started in that one moment where I'd heard these questions and I pictured myself on the other side of the microphone answering them, even though I didn't have any of that information. So that opened up this investigation on how do you live a meaningful life? How do you conduct yourself and operate regardless of how you feel? How do you handle stress, manage stress, and operate at a high level? So hopefully that answers the question.
That definitely and I love that, like, right on the spot, you remember those 2 specific questions
Mm.
from, Tony Robbins that obviously had an effect on you if you remember them at this at this stage, so that's pretty cool, and so, obviously, it sounds like fitness was a when did that become part of your life?
So I enlisted in the Israeli military when I was 18 years old. I went 3 days after I graduated high school and I served 2 years over there. I deferred college a year. It ended up becoming two. And the story of how I got into college is for another time. But what happened was I would go through these fitness tests while I was in the military. And in middle school, I couldn't finish a mile. I remember making up my mile time or something, and people were like, no way you could do it. And I didn't even know how far a mile was. And obviously, I didn't do it every time I had said I could do. And I quickly learned, like, all right, this is kind of what gym and fitness is about. And so my proficiency in fitness really started, I would say, in 2017 is when I really 2018 is really when I started to just take things to another level. I had done CrossFit. I had run in the military. I lifted some weights in college, but I couldn't really do that many push-ups in the military till the end of training. I didn't even know what a dip was when I was in the military, and I let alone a pull-up. I had shoulder surgery while I was studying for the LSAT, so like that took me out, and the doctor said I'd never be able to do another pull-up. And I'll tell you a story about pull-ups probably later in this podcast. And the point is fitness really became a thing for me. I would say when I was 20 years old after the military, going to the gym and some frat bro teaching me how to lift weights and about supplements. I abandoned the supplements, but I stuck to the weights. And so from there, it was just a matter of skipping leg day, following bro splits, and like just going through the generic journey that most amateurs go through or
Yeah.
most beginners go through, I would say. And, I was eating whatever I want, having a good time, like not really taking myself too seriously. Law school, I picked up CrossFit, and nothing really changed aesthetically, but functionally and conditioning wise, I was in like pretty crazy shape and I was pretty strong, like relative to where I was.
Yeah.
And that gave me a solid foundation for skills, swinging a kettlebell, manipulating a barbell a certain way. And so that really helped me understand like the importance of physical fitness and like seeing my body and feeling my body get stronger while also experiencing some injuries, tearing my labrum, getting some disc protrusions. Like injuries open up the door to a smarter training career. So
Yeah.
that forced me to adapt in each of those situations my training style. So once I hurt my back, I had to abandon the barbell, learned about breath work. And so my fitness career took a leap in 2020, I would say, where I changed my body composition in 2018. I went from like, I got down to probably like 7, 8% body fat from like 18 ish and had this crazy body awareness of like, core strength associated with mental awareness and just feeling myself in a completely different light. I learned about fasting and I understood calories. When you see your body physically change, it is I'm sure you know this, it is the most empowering feeling. It honestly makes you feel like you can do anything.
Well,
It's
I
like
think
the ultimate.
one of the biggest things with that is right now money can buy so many things, but one of the few things it can't, well, there's happiness, the saying, but you can't buy being in incredibly physical shape,
Mhm.
and knowing, like you said, understanding the nutrition behind it and the core strength and the mobility. And I'm guessing, do you do CrossFit much anymore?
No,
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 I was guess when I heard the injuries coming, and nothing against CrossFit,
no,
but
no.
it sometimes you overload things, and so you need to put the time and effort in. And I always see these reels pop up where it's like, if a guy walks into his room in his 40s and 50s and he's in shape, I immediately know he's disciplined, he's motivated, he can stick to a plan, he can
Yeah.
do X, Y, and Z. Um, so yeah, that makes a lot of sense there.
I used to get intimidated by people like that until I realized how much respect it deserved
Mm.
because in so many ways I wanted it but couldn't figure out how to achieve it. And when I was really trying to transform my body, I was thinking like, you know, I'm a smart guy. I took the bar and there was a time in my life where, I wasn't that competent. And it was for me a very interesting experience because I went from not understanding and not being physically fit in a way that I wanted to be to feel like I unlocked a whole other level of life. And all these smart people that, all the credit in the world to everyone that went to every Ivy League school and, achieved awesome things in their careers. For me, I just felt like this was a level some people couldn't untap. Most people couldn't untap.
Yeah.
And I'd figured it out. Like I was led into the secret club. I'd done the work. But the other thing is like what gave me the confidence was dumber people have figured it out. How can they figure it out, but I can't figure it out if I'm all of a sudden this smart guy who took the bar, past the bar, like
Yeah.
what's going on here? So I committed and I did the work. I understood I tracked my nutrition. I still track my nutrition. I started getting stronger. I started following a program by JTM Fit, Jay Marinak. Shout out to Jay. And his programs changed my life, where it was a horizontal bodybuilding structure with like CrossFit elements to it. So you're swinging a kettlebell, but not till you die, like for
Yeah.
8 reps,
Yeah.
without banging it against your wrists, like control. Barbell lifts, but like super functional, not like kettlebell complexes, barbell complexes, dumbbell complexes once a week. So there was like a nice mix of calisthenics, barbells, dumbbells, kettlebells, core work, conditioning, and mobility. And it really unlocked my body and my mind in so many ways. It set me on this path to marathoning, ultra marathoning, high volume calisthenics, and raising tens of thousands of dollars for different organizations by doing things like 1,018 pull-ups in 4 hours, 1,018 push-ups in an hour, 1,018 dips in an hour and change, 3-hour marathon twice, 58-mile ultra marathon straight, no walking, no headphones, all because I had like done the work and figured out how to build that base on top of going through injuries, learning how to train a little bit smarter, how to recover more effectively, and figure out a few other things along the way.
So it sounds like you are a very reflective person.
Yeah.
You go through something and you actually think about it and then how to make changes, what works, what doesn't. Is that a pretty accurate assessment right there?
I think reflection is a life hack that is extremely underutilized, and the awareness around it, how it can be leveraged, is also underappreciated. So, yes, I am a reflective person because that's how you build discipline. That's how you audit your behavior. It's how you understand your performance, where you're at relative to where you want to go, understand who you need to become to achieve the things that you want to achieve. So reflection to me is a skill, and it's an attribute that can be acquired and honed, and the more effective you get at it, the faster you can iterate and improve. So yes, I am a reflective
What's
person.
your process for reflection? Do you journal or is there something different?
It's a combination of things, you got to watch game tape, right? So
Right.
I document a lot. Writing is probably one element of it. Like journaling was a very big portion of my life. Now, LinkedIn and when I'm studying becomes a platform for me to kind of publish. Like I've been published in different magazines and stuff, but it's not the same thing as like sharing your thoughts out in the public to a network, and is different than just speaking to the camera. So I've done interviews, I've listened to those interviews back, I've done seminars and keynotes and many coaching sessions, and I've listened to all those back. I had thousands of hours in court where I could also watch back my performance. I am constantly looking at what I'm writing, rereading what I'm writing, reading to inspire my thoughts, asking myself what I think about those things. But in terms of uh, formal process, it's not so much one question. It's the idea of raising awareness in your life and understanding conceptually. The more self awareness you have, the more impactful it is for your entire life in terms of acceleration and speed that you operate, speed to change, to transformation, to recovery. And so it's a constant thing. Like every day I have 3 personal and 3 professional tasks, and I keep an archive of everything for like the last 5 years. And so I understand, and I've even put into AI like to identify the trends, themes, like different
Well,
things that go through, but it's a constant iteration, and there's no one medium, but there's a lot of question asking. So I would say my informal or formal process is more about what went well today, what didn't go well today, what was a special moment today, especially now that I'm a dad of 2 baby girls. It's like, what are and I could probably count on one hand the amount of hours I get with them during the week before they get to bed, and like when I'm up early and out the door to the office.
mm.
It's for better or worse, on the weekends, I try to maximize the time with them and my presence with them. But I would say a lot of it is, what are those moments in the day that really stood out? If it's a smile that they had, or a PR, or just that I didn't miss a session, like I'm really auditing to see what went well and forcing myself to extract 1 to 3 things that were especially valuable or important to me. Conversely, what didn't go well, and how could that have gone better, and what am I going to do differently? And so sometimes that's writing, sometimes it's just in my head, and then it's, put me to sleep, and then I'll think about it the next day if it comes up. I don't meditate. I just think a lot about where I'm at relative to where I want to go, and what changes do I have to make in order to get there.
What are your views on failure then, in terms of thinking about what went well and what didn't go well?
Great question. Genuinely great question. Before I answer, what do you think about failure?
I I when I was younger, it was either you win or you lose, and that was kind of the mindset. But now it's, unless you are stopping for whatever reason, or well, even in that case, it's you either succeed or you learn.
Hmm.
Failure's not really there. So I think it's an opportunity to improve on something that you didn't quite accomplish yet.
Agreed. I'm right there with you. Something I tell my team every day: if you're not failing, you're not playing big enough, and you're playing it too safe. I think it's cliche to say, some things about failure, so I'm going to try to avoid them. But my personal take on it is I wouldn't be here without it. And I haven't grown immune to it because it still stings when I don't get something that I want, but I
Yeah.
understand the value of persistence and recovery. And so failure is inevitable if you're playing the game the right way, because it means you're experimenting, it means you care, it means you're working at a level that you don't have enough expertise or refinement in. So you need to go and get more reps in order to achieve that level of expertise. So for me, failure is the cost of doing business.
Yeah.
But again, that speed to recovery doesn't mean that I'm not hurt by the thing. I want to understand why sometimes. To your point, reflection, I would say my take on failure is you have to constantly put yourself in a position to, like I said, test yourself just outside the bounds of your skill set, like progressively overloading,
Yep.
right? In the gym, it's fail quickly, right? Or get to failure, or relative 1 to 2 reps short of failure, right? Like however you want to look at it. But you should be operating at a point where it's 80% of your max, but
Yeah.
you have that relativity of what your max is. And so unless you're unless you're just like content with where things are at and have zero intention of trying to do any better than you're doing, because in my view that's a form of self-sabotage, trying to play it safe, and you're leaving opportunity on the table to maximize life because of it. But at the same time, like, there's certain things that we can have a growth mindset in some areas and still maintain a fixed mindset in others, even if we're a growth
Absolutely.
oriented person, right?
Yeah.
So there's certain areas like, yeah, I'm not going to go out and try to fail at because it's not going to maximize my time, energy, or effort. But
Yeah.
then there's other times, like, I'm not going to go try to be a professional athlete. Doesn't make any sense for me. Like, I could go fail
I'm
my way
well
there.
past that one. Yeah.
So, like, for me, it's within my given set of circumstances. How can I pursue excellence, expertise, refinement, fulfillment, passion, purpose, do things? And if you don't know what any of those are, then just, to my earlier points and to Derek's earlier points, like, go out and give, go out and serve. And from there, you figure out who you can help, how you can help, but just give and don't give with expectation. And eventually you figure out mission, purpose, passion, and the like. But then the failure, right? As much as we love the gym, we fail a lot in the gym. So seek it, want it, expect resistance and plan for it, as Stephen Pressfield said. So uh, that's my take on failure.
I like it. I noticed I teach 10 and 11-year-olds, and I noticed a level of fear around failure, and it was they kids would just be so nervous to try something because they didn't wanna get it wrong.
Yeah.
So we started I put up on the board, "How many times did you fail today?" And now they tally it, and the goal is to see how many failures you can get in a day, and I love sports, so I'll play clips of Kobe Bryant talking or Michael
I
Jordan or
see the
somebody.
Mamba.
Yeah, yeah, oh, yeah, yeah, I got that on there. Um, and just talking about the importance of it, and like you said, from my education background, I don't remember much from grad school, but it was, Lev Vygotsky, I think is how you pronounce his last name, had a zone of proximal development, which is you wanna teach kids just outside what they
Mm,
know, not too much where they get overwhelmed, but
mhm.
like you said, where you're at the gym and maybe you can do 12 reps, or in your mind you have, all right, I'm getting 12 reps, and that's all you do and you stop. But if you really pushed yourself, how many times could you get 18 to 20? And you don't even realize it till you get to that point where you're pushing yourself just outside that limit. So
100%.
I think that's I think that's incredibly important. How does that translate and the reflective part that we talked about into working with the people that you work with, high level execs or lawyers and people who have high stress jobs.
Well, a lot of it gives me credibility. The other thing I'll say is understanding the role of self sabotage in your life, where it manifests, how it manifests. In terms of understanding the role of self sabotage in my life and in the life of others, it's the different buckets and the different ways that it manifests. So when it comes to reflection, I could understand what form of self sabotage I'm actually engaging in so I could get out of my own way faster and then in turn accelerate the speed to recovery, meaning getting over the failure and being able to iterate and improve so I can help other people. And so a big part of that is identifying the ways that other people are getting in their own way. So it's very easy to hear like, oh, I could never do that. Well, that's limiting belief and that's a form of self-sabotage. Okay,
Right.
well, now we've identified it and we can understand if we don't speak those words into existence, it's not some like woo-woo stuff. It's more practical, right? So
Yeah.
we're now removing an obstacle that even if you don't want to speak it into the universe, all that other stuff, like we just mentally create more bandwidth to go and achieve the thing that we're after because we spend less time ruminating, less time in thought, more time in action. So, by virtue of, let's take Kobe Bryant as an example. I'm not going to talk about the delusional, incredible self worth that this man instilled on himself. I want to talk about the reps. He wasn't an exceptional athlete in the same way maybe you'd see a LeBron or anything like that. Obviously, this is relative to the
NBA players. Yeah.
NBA, right? To the general population, obviously he's beyond exceptional athlete, but I'm going to pretend I'm dealing with reasonable people here. So, uh, he got in more reps every single day, meaning if player A is practicing for 1 hour a day, Kobe Bryant, for every 1 hour one player practice, he would get three. And he would do that every day. And then he would have a game. So he's getting more hours in, which just increases the volume. Hormozy talks about volume. Like it's
Yeah.
not that hard. I was even watching an interview of like a K-pop rock star the other day, like on a short, and she was talking about K-pop training. And so they would start at 8 o'clock in the morning and finish at 6 p.m. at night. Everyone would go home and she would stay there for another 6 hours. Like it wasn't that rocket science. She was just
No.
literally got 6 more hours every single day compared to everyone else that she went with. And now I believe she's like the biggest K-pop star in the world. So it's the repetition that creates the output and the outcome. How that helps when it comes to reflection is understanding when you can identify those different types of self-sabotage and how it manifests in your life, people pleasing, negative self-talk, uh, you name it. You pick your poison, really. It's easy to start to reflect and say, all right, I was getting in my own way in this way. I was getting in my own way in that way. And
Yeah.
so once you do that, you're like, okay, now solve for X. I'm just going to focus on the thing I want instead of trying to please someone else or talk poorly about myself. And that creates more space and clarity by removing distractions, addition by subtraction, to go and pursue the thing.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. Do you have two windows open with Riverside?
I might
It's something popped up.
think I have three,
Oh, okay.
but I've had that happen before too. And usually
Yeah, it shouldn't be an
that's all I
issue.
have open now.
Okay. Um, so what it seems like you've simplified the process vastly. Figure out what you want, figure out the steps to get there, and then do that. What gets in people's way, do you find? What are some of those? I mean, you talked about self-sabotage. Is it mostly just internal that is keeping people back that you found?
Well, it's even a layer deeper, right? At the beginning, we were talking about raising awareness. So raising awareness is mean overanalyzing a situation. Less time in thought, more time in action. Simplifying means do more, think less, act, iterate, improve. And Ray Dalio, founder of a hedge fund called Bridgewater, which is like arguably the most valued hedge fund the in the entire world, he talks about this idea of loops in terms of you experience a problem, and it's the cover of his book called Principles. You experience a problem, you diagnose it, you analyze it, and then you solve it. And so it's just this continuous loop. And so when people try to problem solve, they spend too much time in the diagnosis or in the analysis. And if you can accelerate that 3-step process from 1 to, okay, like I know what went wrong, and now I'm going to sit here debriefing it to the point where, again, self sabotage is going to get in your way largely in the form of negative self talk, stuff like that. And this happens to me too, still. I'll get a survey, someone will go 1 out of 5, and they'll be like, "This is the worst thing I've ever seen." And I'll be like, "Whoa, what?
Yeah.
Wasn't that bad?" Like, it could have been, you know? And in the same seminar, it's like that was a lifeline I needed. And like that person goes on to enter a poetry competition in places. So it's a very wide spectrum where you have to go through that like what stops most people is they overanalyze. They spend too much time in thought and not enough time in action within that thought loop. And so the less you overthink the failure, the obstacle, and you start thinking how you can make these emotions work for you, meaning guide them to their proper place. What I would say is there's this great map called the map of consciousness. And I ironically have the book right here. I'd seen the map, but I never got the book. And I recently got the book because I'm going to start delivering more seminars on burnout and cognitive reframing. And so I wanted to get through this book in particular because it's into like energy scale, stuff like that. But there's this great, I don't know if I'll be able to pull it up right here, but you can Google it if you're listening to this and you look up the map of consciousness. And so within the map, it offers you a spectrum of emotion, if you will. The lowest on the totem pole being shame and the highest being enlightenment. They're not ranked 1 to 10 by any means, but in terms of like the lowest feeling of emotion within the human consciousness to the quote unquote highest feeling, where are we at? Where's anger? Where's greed? Where's joy? Where's happiness, as we were talking about? Where do all these things fall? What about instead of getting from shame to enlightenment, we just try to get to neutral? And so I think having neutrality is where, not to the point where it's indifference, but to the point where we don't let it shame ourselves or enlighten ourselves, right? Like we don't have to be like full throttle or like absolutely at zero. So a big part of it is to stop getting in your own way. You start realizing and start asking yourself, what is the action that I need to take next, rather than how much longer am I going to sit here in this thought loop thinking about the worst thing that ever happened, when it's just the moment and you can make another moment. At that moment, you won't get to the next moment, and it wouldn't shape you to meet the next moment. So I would say, in my opinion, that's some of the stuff that's getting in people's way.
I think I've also noticed a lot of people don't even look at that analyze part. A problem happens and then they go back and they repeat the same thing that led to that problem, and they're stuck in that cyclical pattern there as well. So I think getting people to start that analyzing step is a huge important piece of everything. And it's tough. I mean, how quickly does 6 months go by and you don't even realize it, and people just get stuck in the monotony of life, and that's kind of unfortunate, you know. If we can get to the point where every day is seen as its own day, then that sort of monotonous feeling goes by the wayside, and the appreciation is there. And you were talking about being in service at the beginning and using that to find your purpose, I think is huge. If you can enjoy what you're doing and you're helping somebody else out, um, everything seems to line up. Another thing at school we were doing is it came back to us today. I had the kids make these cards, on note cards, and we laminated and stuff, and they would just send like they just had a nice message on them, like, "Thank you for being you," and that was it, and there was no name on it, they were just numbered, and we did this. It was before Thanksgiving, and all the kids passed them out. One of the girls came up to me today, she goes, "Mr. O, I got my card back from a little kid on the bus today." It had gone around to all these different people and somehow ended up right back in her hand, and
Wow.
I was floored. I couldn't believe that that had actually happened, but it was she was ear to ear beaming with it, and it was just like, "All right, how many people did you make smile just from that one little simple act?" So
Mm.
it was kind of a cool experience that happened today, and it kind of popped into my head, so
You know what's awesome about that? Success is about how many lives you can enrich. And how many lives in the last year have you enriched? I'm sure it's in the hundreds just by virtue of working with, having your own pod, who you meet on the street, the classes that you teach, the outreach that you make. Like, you've enriched my life today because you're giving me a platform to talk about things that I geek out on in many ways, and you geek out on,
oh,
obviously.
100%,
So, like,
100%.
that is enriching someone's life. And so another aspect of this, and Abraham Maslow talks about it, talked about it, uh, where when you're living out your purpose, when you're talking about the things that you geek out on, you're actually bringing out the best in other people. When you're living out that purpose, that mission, what's happening is you're lifting somebody up. You're improving their quality of life. And when you do that, that's living in alignment. That's living in purpose. That's enriching someone else's life
Yeah,
because you wanted to make a positive ripple in the world. You wanted to make an impact. And I think what gets lost on the people that have that mentality is that those are exceptional qualities. And people that are exceptional because they exhibit those qualities don't realize that they're exceptional. And so they spend time self sabotaging. And
mm,
part of, like, high performers in general, that perfectionism, which is another form of self sabotage, if you understand that fundamentally and you can compartmentalize it, you could put it in a box and understand why it's there and where it's playing a role in your life, you realize that you're being unreasonable with yourself. And so it's not about being stupid, like you didn't make that team, you didn't get that question right, moron. It's about, are you being reasonable? Like, are you truly being reasonable with yourself? Or are you being dramatic? And so if you can bring, when we talk about grace, it's really, can you bring reason to your situation and say, would a reasonable person do this? Would they get it themselves for failing? They'd be like, oh, that probably wasn't the best move. I can address that and that's not going to happen again. Okay. So that's really what we mean by grace, bringing some reason, some sincerity, a little bit of gentleness that comes along with it. Because again, when it comes to service, when you get out of your own way, people are always like, how can I make more money? It's not about how you can make more money. It's about asking the right question. The right question is, who can I help? And so if you start thinking about how you can give, everything else opens up. And that's a big part of it, because you never know who you're inspiring. You never know who you're impacting. You never know who's watching. And if you do things with expectation, no wonder you're going to be so upset. I'm not saying not to have aspirations. What I am saying is to be kind to yourself so you can make room for all the beautiful change in your life, for all the failure, for all the opportunity, for all of the experience to shape you, so you can then take steps towards that vision that you have for yourself, because we think in pictures. So if we start, like, with that alignment, if we stop self-sabotaging, if we bring reason, a little bit of kindness to those interactions with ourselves, things change, and they could change quickly.
I like that line, "Be kind to yourself," because that definitely is something that's hard for. I know it's hard for me sometimes, I know it's hard for a lot of people, and it all, I guess, comes back to that self-sabotaging and maybe not having realistic, expectations on what you're doing and what you're capable of doing in the given moment. Um, but I like that you said that. That one kind of hits, right? That one definitely hits.
Cool.
Um, so aside from congratulations on the two girls, but how old are they? How
Thank
old are
you.
your girls?
My second one turns 1 on Sunday. My other
Oh,
one is 2.
nice. Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you.
First birthday is a big one. That's always fun. Although
Yeah.
they just stick their face in the cake and they're good to go
They got a
from
nice
there.
smile on though, that's good.
Yeah. Now, what aside from family,
Mhm.
because I'm getting a sense how important that is to you, what would you in 10 years say, looking back, what would deem the work you're doing a success? What would you want to see? Or you can go 5 years if 10 is
No,
too
no, I love the question. I'm, uh I'm a fan of the question. I asked something similar. What would deem it a success? Wow. It's such an important question that not enough people ask, and I ask myself versions of it for as reflective as I am, as you so kindly pointed out, that when I think about encapsulating it into one sentence, phrase, or anything like that, it's important to simplify, but you also feel like one word can't like, just puts it in a box. So I think going back to that earlier statement, how many lives have I enriched? I would hope that my work is deemed a success outside of family. Obviously, like you said, family
Yeah.
first and foremost, my wife, my kids, my parents, my siblings. Outside of that, it would be about impacting as many lives as I can in a meaningful way. So if my cap is like 10, then I hope I've maxed those 10 lives out and enriched their lives in the best way possible. So it'd really be about what kind of like how have I left a positive impact on the world, in what way? Because that's the thing. Like, they won't remember your name, but they'll feel your impact, maybe. And so, if my impact is felt in the form of people making, being a little bit kinder to themselves, the ones that should be kinder to themselves, kinder
Yeah.
to themselves, right? Whatever that even means these days. But the ones that are like really hard on themselves because they're really trying to make the world a better place in a high value way. I would hope that my success is about how I've enriched their lives, that makes them want to be better and inspires others to be better and keeps creating those positive ripples, that positive impact. Um, but that's what I would hope uh, in some
That's
way,
an
shape, or
awesome
form.
answer. Well, you can chalk one up for me because you definitely
Appreciate
have
that.
made an impact and a positive impact on me. And I will say my mother always listens to these when they first come out on Monday morning, so she'll appreciate it too. So you can count two for sure right
Hi,
there.
mom.
Well, I don't want to take up any more of your time, Jonathan. I appreciate you hopping on with me. Aside from checking out Inside the Inspired podcast, everybody go check that out on YouTube. Is it on Spotify in those areas as well?
Yes, sir.
Yep. Everybody like, follow, subscribe, comment, everything you can. How else can people get in touch with you?
Well, I really appreciate the time today. Honestly, fantastic conversation from my experience. You did a great job of making it about the audience. And that is awesome because that is
No, thank
service.
you.
You can keep up with what I'm doing on LinkedIn or at insidetheinspired.com. You can follow me on LinkedIn at Jonathan Z. Cohen. You can follow for posts on mindset, fitness, and personal growth. Thank you so much again, Derek. This was awesome. And yeah, rate this podcast too, the Health Movement Podcast. 5 stars.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Well, thank you everybody for listening. Um, don't hesitate to reach out to Jonathan. As you can tell, he's living life the right way and really trying to help people out. So thank you all for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.